The forest was older than memory itself. Its trees rose like immense, blackened pillars, their branches clawing desperately at the sky, their gnarled roots tangled in the bones of forgotten travelers. The locals, in hushed tones, would tell you the woods had moods that it listened, that it remembered every footstep and every whisper. And when outsiders came to camp, the forest would decide if they ever left alive. For friends Ethan, Claire, Marcus, and Julia drove north into the heart of this wilderness, chasing the promise of true solitude. They were all seasoned campers, but this trip was supposed to be different. No phones, no GPS, no distractions from the outside world. Just the warmth of a fire, the sound of laughter, and the profound silence of nature. The trailhead was barely a suggestion, marked only by a rusted sign half swallowed by creeping moss. Beyond it stretched a narrow, winding path that quickly disappeared into deep shadows. Ethan, the group's self-appointed leader, grinned as he hoisted his heavy pack. "Perfect spot," he declared. "No one will ever bother us out here." The others followed, full of excitement, completely unaware that the forest had already taken notice of their arrival. By dusk, they had pitched their tents in a small clearing. The fire crackled to life, sending a shower of sparks rising into the dense canopy above. Marcus, ever the showman, began telling ghost stories, his voice low and theatrical in the growing dark. Julia laughed, but it was a nervous sound, and she clutched her blanket a little tighter. Claire just rolled her eyes, trying to seem unimpressed, though she couldn't stop her own eyes from darting into the darkness that pressed in around them. When the fire started to burn low, Ethan wandered off to gather more wood. He returned a few minutes later, his face pale, his hands trembling. "There's something out there," he whispered, his voice strained. "I saw eyes," Marcus scoffed, always the skeptic. It was probably just a deer. "Man, relax." But Ethan's voice cracked as he insisted. "They weren't animal eyes. They were watching me, just waiting." The group tried to dismiss it, to brush off the unease that had settled over their camp, but none of them slept soundly that night. The forest creaked and sighed around their tents, and every gust of wind seemed to carry whispers that were not their own. Morning brought a brittle, weak sunlight that struggled to pierce the thick leaves. The friends decided to hike deeper into the woods, exploring the ridges and streams. Yet the woods felt strange, almost endless. The paths seemed to loop back on themselves in ways that made no sense. Julia swore she recognized the same twisted oak tree at least 3 times. Claire pulled out her compass, but the needle just spun uselessly, a frantic, chaotic dance. By afternoon, their wandering led them to a ruin, a collapsed cabin, its roof caved in, its door hanging crookedly from a single hinge. Inside, they found rotted furniture and deep claw marks etched into the wooden walls. A single journal rested on a dusty table, its pages brittle with age. Marcus, curious, picked it up and began to read aloud. "The forest doesn't let you leave. It feeds on fear. It waits until you're too tired to fight." A heavy silence fell over the group. Ethan slammed the book shut, his face grim. "It's just some lunatics rambling." But Julia whispered, her voice barely audible, "What if it's true?" That night, the fire refused to catch. The wood felt damp and heavy, even though the air was bone dry. The darkness pressed in on them, feeling thicker, somehow alive. On the 3rd night, Claire woke to the sound of footsteps circling her tent. She held her breath, her heart pounding in her chest, just listening. The steps were deliberate, heavy, and sounded like something was being dragged. She cautiously peeked outside, but saw nothing but swaying shadows. Yet the footsteps continued, pacing, circling, a slow, relentless rhythm. She finally screamed, waking the others. Ethan burst out of his tent with a flashlight, its beam cutting through the dark, but it revealed only trees. Marcus cursed, frustrated, insisting it had to be an animal. Then Julia pointed, her finger trembling. "Look, All around their camp, the soft soil was marked with prints, dozens of them. They were the prints of bare human feet, pressed deep into the earth. No one slept after that. On the fourth day, the forest itself seemed to turn hostile. Paths that were there minutes before simply vanished. Their supplies started to dwindle much faster than they should have. Their easy laughter was long gone, replaced by a tense, heavy silence and growing suspicion. Ethan insisted they should head east, but Marcus argued they needed to go west. Claire broke down, crying softly, clutching Julia's hand for comfort. By noon, they had to admit the terrifying truth. They were lost. The clearing where they had first camped was gone, replaced by unfamiliar terrain, as if the forest had shifted and rearranged itself around them. Then they stumbled upon another ruin. This one was a circle of large stones, all of them blackened as if by a massive fire. In the center of the circle lay bones, human bones, charred and cracked. Julia gagged, turning away. Claire began whispering prayers under her breath. Ethan just stared, his eyes hollow and wide. Marcus muttered, his voice shaking, "We need to leave." Right now, but the forest had already decided their fate. The fifth night, the group huddled together, refusing to separate for any reason. Their fire burned weakly, a pathetic flicker that cast long, dancing shadows. And then the voices began. Whispers drifted from the trees, calling each of their names. Ethan heard his mother's voice, clear as day. Claire heard her brother, who had passed away years ago. Julia heard a version of herself, crying and begging for help. Marcus heard nothing until a blood-curdling scream split the night, echoing from the direction of the ruins. They ran. They scrambled through the darkness, branches clawing at their skin, roots tripping their feet. The forest seemed to laugh, a low groan that shook the very ground beneath them. They finally collapsed in another clearing, gasping for breath, but this clearing was wrong. The trees leaned inward, their branches interlocking to form a perfect, suffocating circle. The soil was damp and smelled of decay, and in the very center stood a figure. It was tall and impossibly thin, its face a featureless void. Its body looked as if it were woven from bark and bone, and its limbs stretched to unnatural lengths, its fingers like grasping roots. It tilted its head as if listening to their frantic heartbeats. Julia sobbed uncontrollably, Marcus cursed. Claire fainted, her body slumping to the ground. Ethan, trembling, took a step forward. "What do you want?" he whispered. The figure simply raised a hand, and the forest answered. They tried to flee, but the woods swallowed them whole. Paths twisted into dead ends, and trees closed in to block their way. Every direction they ran, they found themselves right back in that horrifying clearing. One by one, the forest claimed them. Marcus vanished first, dragged screaming into the soil itself. His voice echoed long after he was gone. Claire woke up later to find her tent empty, Julia missing. She followed the sound of crying, only to discover it was her own voice calling to her from deep within the trees. When she reached out, the branches closed around her like a cage. Julia ran until her lungs burned and her legs gave out. She stumbled upon the cabin again, but this time it was whole, as if new. Its door stood wide open, an invitation into the dark. Inside, she saw Ethan. He was sitting at the table, writing in the journal. His eyes were hollow, his skin pale and translucent. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice breaking. He looked up, and a slow, empty smile spread across his face. "The forest doesn't let you leave." The door slammed shut. Weeks later, another group of hikers found the campsite. It was abandoned. The tents were shredded, the supplies scattered everywhere. No bodies were ever recovered. Only the journal remained, its final entry written in Ethan's familiar handwriting. "We came to camp. The forest came to feed. It remembers us now. And it waits for you." Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more chills. See you next time.